A single dad offered his desperate neighbor the empty room upstairs, never imagining that she would become the one person standing between him and the loss of everything he had built. The rain started at 10:47 p.m. Andre Cole knew that because he'd been staring at the clock in his workshop for over an hour, watching the hands crawl, while he sanded the curved arm of a rocking chair that was never going to feel quite perfect. The Itauba wood fought back the way beautiful, stubborn wood always does, and his shoulders ached from the repetition. But he kept going, because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant remembering that the upstairs room was empty again. Thursdays were the worst. Sophia had left that morning with her backpack and her favorite stuffed rabbit, climbing into her mother's car without looking back. 8 years old and already experienced in transitions. Already learning that love can come in shifts, on schedules, in the careful choreography of divorced parents who had stopped being cruel to each other but had never quite figured out how to be kind. The rain got heavier. It hammered against the tin roof of the shop in a rhythm that should have felt calming, but to Andre, it sounded accusatory. He stood up, walked to the door to close it against the storm, and saw the woman outside. The townhouse next door had been empty for months. Dona Conceição, the longtime resident, had moved in with her daughter in Sorocaba back in February. Since then, the place had been rented by a woman Andre had only seen maybe 3 times, always in a hurry, always alone, always carrying something that looked important. He didn't know her name, he didn't know her story. In the careful ecosystem of the life he had built for himself, neighbors were people you nodded to from the sidewalk. But that night, under the flickering cone of a broken streetlight, she was impossible to ignore. There were cardboard boxes everywhere, soaked through, collapsing, spilling their contents across the pavement like the scattered remains of a life being torn apart in the rain. Books with curling pages, a bronze lamp, clothes still hanging on hangers, a laptop tucked inside a bag, framed photos, the wreckage of an entire life coming undone in public. The woman looked to be in her early 30s, dark hair stuck to her face, jeans and t-shirt drenched through, trying to shove everything into the trunk of a hatchback that was clearly too small for the job. The trunk wouldn't close. She pushed, climbed up, pushed again. Andre watched her try 5 times. On the 6th, she stopped, hands on the edge of the trunk, completely still. Something about that kind of stillness hit him hard in the chest. He looked back at the workshop, at the imperfect rocking chair, at the cold coffee, at the safe, controlled isolation he had built around himself like a fortress. Then he grabbed the heavy canvas tarp from the shelf and stepped out into the rain. The cold hit him before he was halfway there, soaking through his flannel before he even crossed the street. The woman didn't notice him until he was almost beside her. When she turned, she had the expression of someone who had been startled too many times and had learned to expect the worst. "Your books are going to be ruined," he said, nodding toward the rain. "I know," she answered. "Here." He held out the tarp. "At least cover them." She looked at the tarp, like it might be a trick. Then at him. Then back at the tarp. "Why are you doing this?" The question caught him off guard. He didn't have a good answer. "Because they're getting soaked," he said. "Why does that matter to you?" Fair question. He barely knew this woman. He didn't know what had happened. But standing there in the rain, watching her try to save pieces of her life while they dissolved around her, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Useful. "Take it," he said. "You can thank me later." She took it, snatched it from his hands, really, and started covering the closest pile. Her movements were efficient, even though she was shaking, trained, like someone who had done this before. Andre started gathering books, stacking them into the driest boxes he could find. The woman watched him for a second, then joined in without asking permission. For 5 straight minutes they worked in silence, just rain and breath, and the occasional curse when something was too damaged to save. "Serena," she said at last. "What?" "My name. Since you're touching my stuff." "Andre Cole." "I know. You're the woodworker. Donna Conceção talked about you. Said you built her grandson's crib 3 years ago. Said it was beautiful. It was functional, he said. Serena made a sound that might have been a laugh if there had been any humor left in it. Once they had saved the worst of it, Andre finally asked the question that had been building in him since he stepped outside. What happened? The landlord changed the locks. Can he do that? He did. So I guess he can. How much notice? The look she gave him could have stripped paint off a wall. 3 days. Her voice was flat, stripped of self-pity. I paid this month's rent. He threw me out anyway. Andre did the math in his head. Sophia, the business, the fragile stability of the life he had promised himself he would protect. Where are you going now? He asked. Serena looked at the car, the pile of belongings, the house that wasn't hers anymore. I have no idea. The words landed between them in the rain, heavy and impossible to take back. Andre thought about the apartment upstairs. The one he had built over the workshop 3 years earlier for Renata's mother, back when that relationship still existed. He thought about what Sophia had asked him the week before. Why do we have so much space if it's always just the two of us? The smart thing would have been to wish her luck and go back inside, back to the rocking chair, back to the cold coffee, back to the careful, measured, predictable life he had built. Instead, he heard himself say, "You can stay with me." They made it official at the breakfast table 2 days later. Serena showed up at the door carrying a bag of cheese bread and 2 coffees from Jurema's snack shop down the street. "Peace offering," she said when Andre opened the door. "And one request, a written agreement, terms, rent amount, length, expectations." She had written everything out in a notebook before coming over in small, neat handwriting, like she had rehearsed the conversation. "I don't do handshake deals," she said. "Too much room for misunderstanding." That, at least, made sense to Andre. So, 2 adults sat down at the heavy Itaúba table he had built 5 years earlier from reclaimed wood and began drawing boundaries. Serena had already researched local rental prices. She proposed paying half in cash and making up the rest with 2 hours of business consulting per week and 3 home-cooked meals a week. "I'm a freelance business consultant," she said quickly, professionally. "I help small operations optimize processes, improve efficiency, and increase profit margins." Then she glanced out the window at the workshop. "You're running a custom furniture business out of a residential property. Mostly word of mouth, from what I can tell. Probably undercharging. Probably bleeding money in ways you haven't even noticed." She wasn't wrong. "I can fix that," she said. "In exchange for reduced rent, I'll consult on the business." Andre studied her, the sharp intelligence in her eyes, the way she still held on to her own value, even with her life sitting outside in rain-soaked boxes. "The cooking stays," he said. "I have an 8-year-old daughter who thinks cereal counts as a full food group." Something that wasn't exactly exhaustion passed over her face. Deal. The threat arrived on the 3rd day. Andre was in the shop testing stain finishes when a black BMW rolled into the driveway. The man who stepped out looked to be in his 50s, wearing a suit that cost more than Andre's monthly mortgage. Silver hair, country club tan. "Andre Cole?" the man called out. "Ricardo Henriquez. I own the place next door." He said it as if the name should have meant something. "I just wanted to give you a friendly warning, neighbor to neighbor," Henriquez said. "My former tenant moved into your property. She has a documented history of contract violations and professional misconduct. Could cause problems for you." Andre set down the brush. Something about Henriquez's tone, smooth, practiced, faintly condescending, tightened his jaw. "Do you even have a permit to run a business out of here?" Henriquez continued, looking around the workshop like he'd found something unpleasant in a salad. "And now you're housing someone with a history of irregularities. If city code enforcement decided to take a closer look at this little setup of yours." He left the threat hanging. Andre felt a cold rush down his spine. The shop, the income, Sophia's stability, everything rested on a thin line: home occupancy permit, Small scale, no registered employees. Legal, yes, but only as long as every rule was followed perfectly. One complaint to the city could tear down years of work. Henriquez placed a thick, embossed business card on the workbench and left. Andre stood there for a long moment, turning the card in his hand. Then he grabbed his phone, pulled up the municipal zoning code, and spent 2 hours reading regulations. After that, he went upstairs and knocked on Serena's apartment door. Henriquez was here, Andre said. Serena was silent for 3 seconds, the kind of silence that comes from someone calculating how much truth they can afford to tell. What did he want? To scare me. Said you have a history of problems. Said letting you stay here could bring the city down on me. And could it? She asked, her voice flat. What I don't know is whether what he said about you is true. Serena looked at him. For the first time since she arrived, Andre saw something beyond carefully managed exhaustion. He saw fear and choice, the choice of someone deciding how expensive vulnerability might be. She sat on the edge of the table. My consulting business was doing well until about 6 months ago, she said. 3 main clients. One of them was Henriquez. He hired me to review the management practices in his rental properties, find inefficiencies, improve margins, and I found them. He was skipping required maintenance, violating safety code, intimidating tenants so they wouldn't file complaints. I documented all of it. I told him he either fix the issues or they'd go into the final report. And how did he respond? He offered me double my fee to change the report. What was your answer? No. Andre said nothing, just waited. Within 3 months I had lost every major contract, Serena said. He called my other clients, spread stories about my reliability, damaged my reputation in ways that are almost impossible to prove. And then he used fabricated lease violations as a pretext to throw me out. The workshop below them went quiet. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Andre asked. Because it's complicated. And because I needed the apartment more than I needed your sympathy. I didn't want you asking me to leave before I had a chance. Andre rubbed a hand across his face. Thought about Sophia. About the stability he had promised to protect. About the way Renata used to say that every time he stepped in to help, trouble followed. But he also thought about the trail Serena had shown him. The people Henriquez had crushed because nobody had pushed back hard enough to matter. You're not leaving, he said. Henriquez thinks he can intimidate me because I run a business out of my home. What he doesn't know is I have every permit, every inspection, every piece of paperwork filed in triplicate. I built this business to support my daughter. I don't cut corners. Serena looked at him as if she were still finishing the math in her head. He's going to try anyway, she said. Let him. I'll document everything. And if he wants to come after my operation, he's going to find out his businesses won't survive the same level of scrutiny. A pause. Partners? She asked. Partners. They shook hands right there at the apartment door, and Andre felt the same strange certainty he had felt 3 nights earlier in the rain, that he had stepped off the mapped path and into something unknown, maybe dangerous, but somehow exactly right. The inspection notice arrived on Friday, forwarded from the city's building department, 48 hours to cease commercial activity. Serena read the notice, closed her eyes for 3 seconds, then opened them. Henriquez has someone inside City Hall, she said. How much time do we have to prepare the appeal? The cease notice says 48 hours, but you have 7 days to file. Once filed, the notice is automatically suspended while it's under review. You know that off the top of your head? I spent 6 months learning everything I could about the systems Henriquez uses to destroy people. You learn fast when you're the one being destroyed. They worked until dawn. Serena reviewed Andre's permits against municipal code line by line. Andre organized 5 years of paperwork by date, category, and inspection. At 2 in the morning, she closed the laptop. You're in full compliance, she said. I'm sure. I ran it 3 times using different methods. Same result. Your home business permit is valid, renewed on time, and within every listed limit. The workshop counts as an accessory structure, not the primary residence. There's no violation. Andre exhaled. File the appeal first thing tomorrow morning, she said. I'll build the presentation. You organize the documentation. The following Thursday, with Sophia back home, they went to the city hearing. Serena presented the case with the kind of precision that only comes from someone who has spent months building arguments designed to survive attack. Andre answered the board's questions without his hands shaking. In Serena's presentation, Henriquez appeared as someone with a documented history of abusing city complaint systems, 43 filings in the last 3 years, all resolved through low-value settlements. The board ruled in Andre's favor. The notice was dismissed. As they walked out, Andre stopped in the hallway with the file box in his arms, his knees suddenly weak. "We did it," he said. "You did it," Serena replied. "I just came with you. You built the whole defense. You built the kind of business that could be defended." They stood there for a moment in the hallway that smelled like floor cleaner and paper. Somewhere above them, a bell buzzed. "What are you going to do about Henriquez?" Andre asked. "File a counterclaim for harassment, retaliatory reporting, and abuse of process. We have documentation showing pattern and intent. It'll take time, maybe months. It may never lead to much, but at least he'll know someone is watching now, and that this time I'm not standing alone." She looked at him. "That changes the math." Sophia came back on Thursday. Andre picked her up from school, bought her ice cream, and listened to the full story of the science project Serena had helped her with over the weekend, the one that had earned a perfect score. "Do you like her?" Sophia asked, spoon halfway to her mouth. Andre let the question sit there for a second. "I think I do." "Good," Sophia said, returning to her ice cream. "This house is way too big for just us anyway." Andre laughed, the kind that comes from deep inside without warning. That night, after Sophia was asleep, he stopped in front of the upstairs apartment. The light was still on. Serena's shadow moved across the window, working, always working. He climbed the stairs and knocked. She opened the door with that expression of someone who had been surprised too many times to be surprised easily anymore. "Sophia adores you," he said. "It's mutual. I adore her too." Serena went quiet. Andre had already learned there was a difference between Serena's silence when she was processing and Serena's silence when she was waiting. This was the second kind. "A real partnership," he said. "Not tenant and landlord, not charity and gratitude. Partnership. The business consulting, the house, all of it. Officially." "That's big," she said. "I know. You can say no." Serena looked at him for a long moment, then out over Campinas through the apartment windows, at the life she had brought there in soaked cardboard boxes, and slowly started putting back together. "I'll need to see a draft of the contract," she said. "Of course, with a fair exit clause for both of us. Obviously. And I want Sophia there when we sign. It's her home too." Andre smiled. "That part's easy." They signed on a Saturday, with Sophia acting as the official witness, dead serious with